Hey, everybody, this is Bob Goodwin, founder of Career Club, and welcome to another episode of Cool Companies You Should Know. At Career Club, we're really excited to be introducing clients to companies who are getting funding, companies that have a lot of momentum, and maybe most importantly, companies that are hiring. And the goal with this series is to help you get to know the executives of some of the cool companies that we've discovered out there. And today is no exception. With me today is Basil Fakhouri. Basil is the CEO and founder of User Interviews. And if we could get Basil on screen, we'd love to get everybody introduced. So Basil, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
No, it's great to have you. So as I was mentioning, core to the thesis of Career Club and why we started doing this series on cool companies is highlighting companies that are getting funding, because the idea is, you've got investors, and the reason they invested in your company was they believe in what you're doing, but they also want to see you scale and grow. And very, core to that is you need people, and you need to continue to grow your team. Mm-hmm. So maybe we could just sort of start off, Basil. Love just to learn a little bit more about your background, and then we can kind of move into how it was that User Interviews came into being.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in North Carolina, stayed close for college, went to Duke. That's when I got my first kind of touch into tech and startups. I interned at a startup in Durham called Evo App when I was a summer between junior and senior year, and then into senior year. After that, I went like everyone else from Duke. We went and joined a consulting firm. So I joined the strategy consulting firm in Boston. It focused specifically on tech and telecom companies. Great first job out of school. And then I actually went to law school. So I went to Harvard for law school. But my first year there, me and one of my best friends from my consulting firm were hanging out, throwing around startup ideas. And we actually came up with an idea and started working on that. So while I was in law school, started my first company, and that I can tell you a little bit about that and how that pivoted to User Interviews as well.
No, that's great. I didn't realize that you had gone to a Harvard Law School. So did you end up completing that, or did you pivot out of that to go do your first startup?
I did complete it, but I was primarily working on the startup while I was in law school. So
that's super cool. So I'd love to hear sort of the one before. What did you guys end up starting?
Yeah, so the same co-founders I have now. So Dennis is one of my co-founders. We work together at that consulting firm. Then Bob is my other co-founder, and he's our CTO. So the three of us were working on this other idea. It was called Mobile Suites. It was a bad idea. It was a mobile app for hotel services, so you could order basically like room service through a mobile app. Yep. And we kind of grinded away on it for a while. Weren't getting the traction we wanted. We kind of realized it was because, we came up with this idea because mobile was big, on demand was big, and hotels were big, and we tried to smash them together, which is not how you come up with a company idea. So after grinding away on it for a bit, we learned about doing user research. So we read the Lean Startup. We started reaching out to customers. We started talking to them. We talked to some of the few users we had. We talked to people on our network who were travelers. And eventually we tapped out everyone we could talk to. So then our hack was we would buy basically refundable JetBlue tickets, go into the airport at Boston, go past security. Once we got past security, we'd call and refund the tickets, and then we'd just go kind of accost people at the gate to give us feedback on the app. And that was really our first taste of user research. And the first thing we learned was, okay, this is a core value problem. This isn't going to get fixed by UX or features. So we decided, hey, we need to figure out what else to do. So we started looking at other ideas, initially in the travel space, got a little bit further. But at this time, we were pretty hooked on this user research concept. So we would always do like some experimentation, and we went through a bunch of ideas, and we'd also do like a level of user research. And that's when we kind of had the aha moment that this user research is really valuable. We're really passionate about it. Maybe there's a business here, and the biggest pain point for us was finding users. And that's kind of when we had the idea for User Interviews, and eventually did some meta research and then did some experiments and realized that this was a company we wanted to build.
So I think that's really interesting because to your earlier point, the first idea was, let's try and take these sort of things and smash them together and see if there's a good idea here. turned out to not be your best idea, it sounds like, but your idea was born out of a genuine need that you guys were experiencing, right? To get user feedback on what it was that you were trying to do in the other thing, right?
Yeah, 100%. It was very much a pain point we had. So we at least knew there were 3 people in the world who thought this was a big pain point. So that's what we were starting from.
So I've got another friend who's got his own company, and he actually wrote a book on innovation. And the first chapter, and I'll always remember this, is find something that sucks and fix it.
Yeah.
You know, for you guys were struggling with something, and like, okay, how can we get more clever and do this in a scalable way? Because it sounds like buying JetBlue tickets wasn't a scalable idea by itself either. So
yeah, exactly. It was a good hack and a good story, but you definitely you kind of hit a ceiling with that as a strategy.
So you guys were struggling with the problem. How did you guys figure out this was a problem that, you know, enough people out there were struggling with that it was an idea worth getting behind?
Yeah, so we did, you know, the kind of meta user interviews, right? We did user interviews with user researchers about how they do user interviews now. So we, you know, tapped our networks, did some cold outreach to user researchers or product people generally in companies. And we asked them, you know, we basically set up an experiment, and it was, look, we're going to talk to, I forgot how many we talked to, call it 10, 15 people. And we were just wanted to ask them, like, when you're doing research, what are your top 3 pain points? And we said, look, maybe if like 60% of them said, I forgot what the exact number was, let's say 60%, we said, if 60% of them put recruitment there, like there's probably, you know, this is a big pain point. So a very basic, you know, not really scientific experiment, but a goal at least. So that's the first thing we did. And pretty much everyone just said, yeah, when we do research, recruitment is the hardest part. So we said, okay, like this resonates with people at least. So we started asking, how do they do this now? And we found there weren't a lot of good options. And one option people were doing was really posting on Craigslist, which there's kind of a old startup kind of idea that's basically, if you want a good company idea, you can go see what's big on Craigslist because it's completely unoptimized, but it shows there's a market there. So we saw all these people posting like, hey, join a focus group, hey, join a user research session on Craigslist. So what we would do is we would just go down the different cities, reach out to everyone who posted one of these and said, hey, we'll do this for you. If you pay us, you know, X dollars. It was very cheap at the time. And we got some big companies, like large tech companies, large non-tech companies say like, oh yeah, we'd love for you to do this. Like, and we told them we're just going to repost your post on Craigslist, but we just handled the scheduling and the reaching out and the incentives. We didn't have a website at the time. We didn't have a product, but we were able to get clients just doing this basically as a service. So that was our initial, you know, we set goals every week. Like, hey, we want to get our first client this week. We want to get, you know, we want to triple next week. And they start off small, but as those goals compound, you end up proving out the market. And at the same time, we're building up the product around it. So it went from using a Google form and a spreadsheet and us sending manual calendar invites to, you know, the product. Bob was kind of, our CTO was building the product while Dennis and I were trying to do the sales and the operations at the time.
So I actually come from market research and used to, you know, do focus groups and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, the recruiting of respondents is not easy. And obviously the nichier the respondent is, and the more the needle in the haystack kind of respondent, you know, the trickier that it is. So were you guys finding that Craigslist was like your main competition for this, or did you guys figure out, hey, there is sort of a big player here that we've got to take on?
So initially we were going after kind of the low end of the market. So there was basically there were a lot of service firms, so not big tech players, different agencies, consulting firms that were kind of more full service. So they would do the recruitment for you. You know, sometimes they'd have a physical location, sometimes do the research itself. So that was kind of one segment of competitors. There was kind of the do-it-yourself, so people using TaskRabbit or Craigslist or Facebook groups. So that's who we were initially going after. And then there were some bigger companies that were somewhat competitors. They for specific types of research. So obviously there was like SurveyMonkey if you're doing a survey, but they wouldn't really help you with a one-on-one interview or a focus group. So initially, when we didn't have a product, let alone a good product, we were going after the lowest bar, right? And then as we got smarter and as the product got better, then we could level up over time.
So what year are we in right now when all of this is sort of happening ish?
I I think 2015 is when we started like doing the pivot. 2016 is when we really landed on user interviews.
So, all right. So fast forward a little bit. You guys have raised $16 million, right? And your most recent raise was 10, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And so how did you guys then kind of build a business plan, and what was the scalable idea that you took to the investment community?
Yeah, definitely. So, a lot of those nuggets with how we started the company, we've tried to hold within us as we scaled. So there's this level of experimentation, right? There's this level of like looking at data, setting goals, and then talking to users and being very user focused, right? We do dog food, our product. We use our product. We think it's really important to be user focused. So a lot of our initial decision making was based on we just had a lot of demand and we needed to make sure we could fulfill that. So we wanted to go out, make sure we could find the right users, make sure we could automate a lot of the manual processes, get more efficient. And we bootstrapped it for a little bit. And then, after a bit of time, we went and fundraised. And really, I think the thing that sold the initial investors was, hey, these guys, barely had product at the time, and look at this logo list. Like there's real demand here. So that was kind of the initial wow moment. And then after that, as we built the team, then you get into more of your traditional SaaS metrics.
Yeah, I was going to say, so has the business model significantly evolved just in terms of like the revenue model and stuff, or is it kind of basically the same thing, just at scale?
Yeah, 100%. So we used to be purely transactional. So people would pay us per completed session, per project. We are now primarily a subscription based business. And that's been great, I think, both for us and for our clients. It's just added a lot of visibility. It's allowed us to be more cost effective because we have that visibility for our clients, and it's just made the business a lot stronger.
Okay, that's awesome. So you said you've got a couple partners.
Mm-hmm.
I know that listeners are always really interested to kind of hear about leadership style, leadership philosophy, and then relatedly the culture that you guys are building. So would love for you to kind of riff on that for a few minutes.
Yeah, definitely. I love our culture. I think our team does. We try to measure, we do engagement surveys, we have high employee retention overall. And I think it's because we have a strong culture. I would describe our culture as not cool, lady. We're not WeWork, which probably I will say on the downside, probably our highs aren't as high, but I also think our lows aren't as lows. We're built for a marathon, not for a sprint, is what one of my VPs likes to say, which I appreciate. Some of the things we value a lot are we like to say we like prioritize relationships over transactions. So that's both with our clients, that's with the participants, that's with each other, with the team, that we're trying to build long-term relationships. We're not trying to optimize all of these things. We assume best intent. We have kind of related to that. We've been remote from the beginning, even before the pandemic. So we've had to be really intentional about that culture from the beginning. We have a number of values. I'm happy to walk through.
I'd love to hear them, please.
All right, cool. So that's one, prioritizing relationships over transactions. The second is we really like to welcome people as they are. We have a very diverse team. People are welcome to build their authentic selves. And that's something that when we kind of survey the company, we're 100 people. We just became 100 people today. So this is
that's awesome. Congratulations. Very cool.
But that's something that, really comes to the top of the list when we say like, hey, how do you describe user interviews? It's just a very welcoming place. We're really big on open communication and transparency. So that means we don't sugarcoat a lot of stuff. We're very transparent with our goals. If we hit our goals, if we don't, we use a lot of metrics and we share those company-wide. We have different cadences for feedback. We try to be transparent with feedback 360 degrees. And I think people really feel comfortable. If something doesn't seem right, they feel very comfortable sharing it. There's not a lot of like freezing up, which I think is both just on the business side or anything within the company, which I think is obviously super important. One of our values is stay curious. We're a very curious bunch. We ask why a lot. We do a lot of user research. We talk to our customers. People will dig into data. We have like very open data, different reports that are very open for everybody. Anyone can go in and create their own reports. Everyone has access to our customers to do user research with them. So we're constantly like looking for answers, trying to understand things better across the company. It doesn't have to be top down. Another one is fast beats perfect. We like all startups, you kind of need to be fast. That's our main differentiator. So we like to prioritize speed. Like, don't worry about if it's not like 100% buttoned up, as long as you're not betting the company, as long as you're not getting in the way of somebody else. Just go out, do it. We'll learn something from it. And, we try to cut away bureaucracy, try to expedite decision-making. And we try to decentralize decision-making as well. And then
that's awesome. I'm curious with your co-founders, different people bring things, right, to the party. Mm-hmm. And how do you guys kind of mesh your leadership style in a way that actually becomes the user interviews, culture, not Basil's personality implied onto everybody?
Yeah, I will say, I think as a co-founder group, we're probably, from a personality standpoint, a little bit more similar. It's not like, I think when you're drawing your startup box, you're like, okay, this person does X, Y, and this person does W, Z. I would say we probably have more overlap. That being said, I think our leadership team on the whole is more diverse. I think we've brought in people who supplement us in ways that, we think we are lacking, but also there is a consistent vibe of this, transparent, we don't overreact. People feel comfortable talking up. There's kind of this, no one's pulling rank, and really data driven, kind of nerdy, kind of really, focused on understanding, and everyone's kind of like rowing the same direction. So I think there's definitely stuff us as the whole leadership team has in common, and that's really the culture, but there is still, we fill in each other's gaps for sure.
No, that's very cool. And I loved hearing you talk too about how you're kind of that welcoming, and that the team is very diverse. Mm-hmm. And, from diversity, you get, a lot of different perspectives that maybe guys who grew up together, didn't really have, right? But you start to learn from your folks. And it sounds like it's sort of the nature of the business, but it sounds like you guys, as you talked about, like, eating your own dog food and stuff, that there's very much just a listening culture.
100%. And I think like one thing related to that is, this sounds like not a big deal, but I think it's really important for our culture is that people are very willing to change their mind. Like if I come in with an opinion and someone else comes in with an opinion, if that person brings data or, has a viewpoint or, a logical approach I didn't think about, like, I'll change my mind. And we see that across the company. And I think that empowers people because they'll see like, oh, my manager, listened to me because I showed some data they didn't have, and that's causing these effects. So there definitely is that listening culture, and also we process it and we'll go, change our actions based on it.
I would suggest that kind of the derivative maybe of that listening culture, the exact example you just gave, is humility, right?
Yeah, I think part of it might be
and I'm up for being wrong too.
Yeah, definitely. I think part of it might be that, me and my co-founders, we weren't anointed successful, right? We had to pivot out of a failed company. So once you're kind of staring into the abyss, you're like, all right, all that matters is finding the right answer.
Basil, Duke undergrad, Harvard Law School. I mean, there's not, it's not the dummy class. So, you can definitely see like, hey, we're pretty smart. We've got it figured out. But that's not, what you guys are bringing to your team. And it sounds like you guys are definitely benefiting from that. Now that you've reached 100, I'm going to guess that maybe somebody's gotten promoted somewhere along the way. What are the kind of behaviors that would get somebody promoted at user interviews?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I mean, we're trying to become a lot more, first of all, like very clear about this is what it takes, like having very clear roadmaps, very, very clear upward trajectories. When you're 10, 15 employees, it's just harder to do that because you're like, there might not be a manager role opening. As we move to 100, we have a lot more clarity, and we've been, investing in that as well. And we do really like promoting people from inside the company. So things that I think are important are, one, doing your job, right? So when you first run a job, you have to do that. That's step one, doing that at a high level. Once you can kind of do that, the next thing is really being able to do it in such a way that your manager kind of trusts you. They don't feel like they're double checking the work. There's not errors. And then, depending on what role you are, you might need different things, but it could be, showing a level of management before you're a manager, whether that's coaching, whether that is organizing, building out new processes. you might not be managing anyone, but those are the skills that like a manager would need, and being able to show that, hey, I'm doing this in addition to doing my basic job very well is a good way to do that. So it really depends what department you're in, what kind of level you are. But that's the general idea. Like when you think about what the next level is, what are things you can do in your current role that helps show those skills and that aptitude?
Yeah, there's some saying for that, but it's basically what you just said, which is if you want that role, start acting like you're in that role. Yeah. And then look at you in it, and then the promotion becomes a much easier thing to pull off. I do want to ask you one question. This is a little bit on the fly, but the original value you talked about was relationships over transactions. And that's really important. Without getting into any kind of crazy details, could you give like a real world example of where that would come into play, where you could actually visualize and see that behavior, that belief?
Yeah, I think it happens all the time with our clients. So, we are helping our clients do their jobs. We're helping them build products that are more user-centric, doing things that we think are really important. And you could imagine a time a client launches a project and it's hard to fill. It's not being done automatically or something like that. We're not, so just to give some definition, someone will launch a project on user interviews saying, hey, I want to talk to 10 people who match these characteristics to do a user research study with them. We might go and put out ads, spend money, or do extra kind of manual stuff there to make sure that we fill that project for that person. Because even if that's not, the best thing for our company at scale to do that, we think it's important to have that relationship, because these people, they came to us trusting that we could help them, and we've kind of implied that we can. So we'll go above and beyond there. And then I think, from the teammate perspective, I think it's really about, assuming good intent. If someone is, being there to support teammates, understanding that, everyone has their own lives going on, and sometimes something might come up in your life that affects you this week, and we have a big enough team now, and that we can actually really support them during that time, as opposed to saying, hey, it's not worth it for me to go out of my way for you in this specific interaction.
So okay, so awesome. Then I guess, just to kind of start to round this out a little bit. So we've learned, about the value proposition, and we've learned about kind of the leadership style, the culture that you guys are building. So the last leg here would be, as you continue to grow the team, how big are you guys trying to get over the next couple of years, just from an employee count size? Yeah,
definitely. So by the end of this year, we're hoping to get to 140 people. So we're growing kind of across departments, another 40. And we're still kind of working on the plan for next year, but it should be pretty significant growth. And we are planning on continuing the fundraise. So we do expect to.
Okay. Awesome. And based on everything you're saying, doesn't sound like that will be a big challenge. I think you'll be spoiled for choice. As you guys are thinking about the 40 roles, to fill for the balance of the year, kind of functionally, where are you guys, looking to hire?
It's really spread out across departments. So always hiring engineers, our sales team scaling up, but those are probably the ones we're hiring the most, in addition to our operations team. So those three, but I think we are hiring across every single department. So marketing, analytics, I mentioned sales, ops, product and engineering, our people ops team, our research team, and our finance team as well, I think. So I think really across the board, we're going to be hiring.
So often, what I'll tell a client is, when companies are growing like this, they're hiring across all functional. They need more of everything. So I think sometimes people think with quote tech companies, that it's just software engineers. And it's like, no. Like,
what you really start to realize is once you hire one person, you hire some engineers, then you need an analytics person to support them, and a product designer to support them, and then, as you get more people, you need more people ops, and then it's kind of a cycle. As you hire more people, it leads to more hiring across the team.
And the other part, maybe you could talk about this for a second, is what I tell folks is not only are they hiring kind of what I call scaling out, but sometimes they're also scaling up, right? And we need to kind of up our game in some things, and bring in people that have got experience with companies, or with a company at a certain scale level. And I'm curious if that mirrors your all's experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to mix. Like I mentioned this earlier, I wasn't just saying this. We really like having a culture where people can stay with us for a long time, or people can get promoted within user interviews and grow with the company. And we think there's a lot of benefits to having that institutional knowledge. But that being said, obviously people who have seen this next stage of growth will also be bringing in a level of knowledge that some of us may not have as well. So we definitely want that mix.
Yeah. And then, and this may tie back to values, so you kind of answer the question as you wish, but, there's the functional things that we're looking for, like finance and all the things you just articulated. As you think about the qualities and like what you're looking for, sort of maybe those softer skills, but the qualities that if you're interviewing somebody, what are you dialed into? What are you looking for?
Yeah, there's a few things. So there's obviously, functional skills, like you said, for each role, but I think we definitely want people who are curious, people who are data-driven, people who can be self-starters. Once again, we are a fully remote team, so showing that you can organize your day, that you can share what you're working on in a way that might be a little bit harder being remote. And someone, there's not going to be someone over your shoulder the whole time, right? So you need to be able to show that you can work at your own pace at the right cadence for the team. But organization skills, and we really focus on people being data driven.
If we think about curious, how would you tease that out in an interview? What would be examples of I'm a curious person?
Yeah, and it's more curious in a work sense for us, right? Like do what you want on your own time outside of work. But I think people who have taken initiative at their previous role, so have said, hey, I noticed X and I went and, learned this and that led to these outcomes, or this was something that wasn't working great. And then, I built this new process and that increased efficiency, or, other people started using this process. I think that's the best way to show that, once again, you have your day-to-day job, you have to be excellent at that, but also showing that you've been able to take the initiative to push yourself or your department forward is really important.
If this is a little bit of a false choice, so I'll let that before I ask the question, but I know it'll be role dependent and some other stuff, but just at a very high level, if you had to pick between this person's got really proven functional skills experience, so somebody who's been playing, center at Duke for 4 years, or somebody that just had the talent that, that it's more of an aptitude. It's a talent draft versus a position draft. How would you sort of fall on that?
Yeah. So kind of, you're saying like aptitude versus experience.
Yes. Yeah.
In some ways, it really depends, like role by role and person by person, and how you compare those. I will say, I think there is more room for bias with aptitude than looking at what's actually been accomplished. So I think we do like to, make sure we're removing a lot of internal biases we might have. And I think, but maybe showing talent, like if there's still some outcomes that prove the talent, right? Like, hey, this was maybe, for instance, someone who may have sold or, built for a different, like we're not really big on like industry knowledge. Like if you've built for different departments over like research departments, that's totally fine for us. Like we choose aptitude over that kind of industry knowledge. But I do think when you just think about like pure aptitude without having any of those outcomes, that does open yourself up to bias that we want to make sure we're avoiding at least.
Now, that's such a great point. And you're the second person in this series just in the last week who has brought up the notion of really trying to dial bias out and recognizing that it exists and taking very concrete steps to dial that out. Yeah. And so that probably naturally and positively circles back to the diversity that you guys have been able to build onto your team. So Yeah.
But I would say if you kind of like, just to reiterate, if you kind of move that question from like functional versus aptitude to like, maybe industry specific versus aptitude, like I would say aptitude, as long as you can like back it up and say, hey, look, that we're being objective here just because it was with a different industry or maybe a slightly different role, we're happy to bring those people in.
I'm glad to hear that. And because I do think that actually the industry is a kind of bias that people bring into it. Like if you haven't been doing this exact same thing at this exact same kind of company, then you're too risky for us. And in my view, it just narrows the aperture way too much and it's shutting out potentially really high quality talent over this very narrow view of what a fit might look like.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Especially with us, like research is one of the awesome things about what we're building. The people we're building for is it's kind of a new department that's growing really fast, but I mean, it is new, right? So it's not like we're selling to sales departments and you have 100 unicorns you can who have sold to that. We're kind of forced to not put ourselves in a corner like that.
No, that's cool. So this has been great. I mean, again, I love how your company started one kind of from the ashes of something else. So that's cool. But it was born out of a real need and one that you guys felt and needed to go solve for your own account and figured out, holy crap, there's a real market for this. Love, kind of the very quick adoption that you guys were able to get and are getting. So that's phenomenal that you're getting confirmation from the investment community that this is a big scalable idea and you guys are seeing that. So that's very cool. The values, relationships, transparency, being able to, you can own your work, be autonomous, that you don't need somebody looking over your shoulder all the time to make sure you're doing what you're doing is great. As you say, kind of this listening environment, is phenomenal. And so if somebody wants to learn more about opportunities at user interviews, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, definitely. And I will say one other thing, one value I didn't mention is we do have a value that is up and to the right. Like we are a high growth startup. Like we're doubling every year. We do care about growing fast. So both the team and revenue and client base and the product. Yeah. So we're definitely an environment, like we're not a burnout environment by any means, but we definitely focused on scaling. So that's part of that's why we raised that money. So I just want to make sure I throw that in there as well. But yeah, if you want to find out more about opportunities, we have our careers page. You can go to our website, user interviews. Let me make sure I get the exact right one. Don't tell people to go to the wrong one. But if you go to userinterviews.com/about, you can see stuff about our team, who's on the team, and a lot of our values and our culture. And different people on my team's kind of in their own words, as well as some of the benefits we offer. And there's a link to all of our current job openings there as well.
That's phenomenal. Well, Basil, thank you so much. Like, I love learning about your company. I love hearing your story. Thank you, Heather, for putting that in the little note there so we can see it. So thank you so much. Congratulations on the amazing company you guys have already built. And definitely is a cool company. So well done. And look forward to seeing the next round get ready, because it's just going to be more gasoline in the engine to drive your growth. So, but I really appreciate it, Basil. Thank you so much.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
No, very cool. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.